Welcome everyone to our Bet Yosef Shiur. Today we'll be discussing and continuing in Siman Sadi, which continues with the laws of Tefillah, especially the laws of the Bet HaKnesset. Siman seif Zayin discusses whether and how a person can pray outside the walls of the Bet HaKnesset, as this can be a common issue, whether a parent is tending to a baby outside, or for whatever reason they do not want to enter the synagogue and they want to pray outside. The Gemara Masechet Berachot Daf Vav reads as follows: Amar Avona, Kol hamitpalel achorei Bet HaKnesset nikra rasha, shneimar saviv reshain italachun. Amar Abaye, Lo amaran ela delo mehadar apel lebet kinishta, ara mehadar apel lebet kinishta litlan ba. Then the Gemara goes on to tell a story of a person that prayed outside the Bet HaKnesset, and Eliyahu Navi came, looked as a Arab, and slaughtered him. Ayin Sham. The Gemara explains that when a person is praying opposite the Bet HaKnesset, it seems that if he's praying to Chas v'Shalom, another power in the world that is worthy of his prayer, and therefore it's a very serious issue. However, as we mentioned in the Gemara, it's only if a person is not facing the Bet HaKnesset. The Rishonim discuss the exact meaning of the Gemara, and there are three explanations that are brought in the Bet Yosef. All of the explanations stem from how to explain the word achorei. Does the word achorei mean from the back of the shul? Does it mean in the front of the Bet Knesset? Or on the outside in general of the shul? As we will explain. All of the explanations agree on the fact that we're referring to a standard synagogue layout where the prayers are conducted towards the Hechal, which is on the eastern side of the synagogue, because all of the prayers of Am Yisrael are always facing Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim, and that's on the east side. And the entrance to the Bet Knesset is from the west, and therefore the eastern side does not have entrances, and only the entrance to the synagogue is from the west. The first explanation of the Gemara is we'll call it Shitat Rashi. He explains that the Gemara is referring to a person who is standing on the western side of the synagogue. He didn't enter the synagogue, and therefore there are three problems to pray there. First, he's outside the synagogue. That of itself is a problem, since the Sibur is praying inside, and he should be in there with them. Secondly, the people inside are praying towards the east, and when a person is standing outside and facing the opposite direction, his back is towards the synagogue, he's facing the west, which, as I mentioned, it seems like he's praying to a different power, opposite the power that the people in the synagogue are praying towards. And thirdly, his back is towards the synagogue. This of itself is a problem. Now, even if he was in the synagogue and he would pray to the west, it would still be a problem because he's not praying to the proper direction, but it wouldn't be as serious of an issue. Additionally, if he were outside the synagogue and he would be praying in the direction that everyone is praying towards the east, it would also be okay, because, again, he's facing the direction that the tzibur is facing. That's the explanation of Rashi. The second shita is the explanation of the Ri, brought in the Tosafot, and brought in the Rabbeinu Yonah as well. He explains that we're talking about a person who is standing on the eastern side of the synagogue, outside the walls of the synagogue, and he's facing the east. Now, even though he's facing the east, which is the proper direction, he's still considered a rasha, and it's still a problem for two reasons. First, he's outside the synagogue, and when everyone is inside the synagogue, he should be inside with them. Secondly, when his back is towards the synagogue, it's an issue, and he seems that he's separate from the kahal. However, if he were to face the synagogue and pray in the direction of the synagogue, towards the eastern wall of the synagogue, even though he would in essence be praying towards the west and towards the wrong direction, the Ri says it's okay, because he's praying towards the Hechal, which is the direction that the people are praying towards. Tosafot brings a proof from the Kaporet, the Bet HaMikdash, that this would be okay. Rabbeinu Yonah points out that according to both opinions, if a person is standing on the north or the south of the synagogue, and his back is towards the synagogue, he would also be considered Rasha. However, if he would face the synagogue, whether he's on the north or on the south, it would be okay, because even though he's not praying towards Jerusalem, he's still facing the synagogue, and the main issue here is that he's not facing the synagogue. The Bet Yosef brings in the name of the Hagot Mamaniyot that these opinions are exactly opposite one another. The Ri and Rashi seem to be totally contradicting each other, and therefore the halacha, you should be machmir like both of these opinions, meaning if you're on the east or on the west, you should pray towards the north or the south, because there's no other solution. The Terkei Moshe argues, and he says that if you were to pray on the western side, in the direction of Jerusalem, in the direction that the tzibur is praying, it would be fine. And he doesn't understand why the Hagop Amriyot, in the name of the Samak, says that you should pray to the north or the south. A simple solution is to pray towards the east when you're standing on the west. The third explanation the Bet Yosef brings is that the Ahore means outside the Bet Knesset, from whatever angle, and therefore praying from any position outside the Bet Knesset is a problem. This is brought by the Hagop Amriyot, and if you look carefully at the Bet Yosef, it seems that originally the Bet Yosef disqualified this opinion, but when he wrote the Bedek Habai, which are his notes in correction to the Bet Yosef that he wrote later in his life, he seems to write that this opinion might be okay, and he sort of retracts the disproof that he brought earlier. However, he does not bring in the Shulchan Aruch. There's also a discussion in the Aharonim, what's first, the Bedek Habai to Shulchan Aruch, Ayin Hikre Lev and Yitzhak discuss it. So it's very difficult, since Maran doesn't bring this opinion in the Shulchan Aruch, it's difficult to say whether or not we should be machmir like this opinion. Maran in seif Zayin reads as follows. Seif Zayin is sort of a continuation of places where you shouldn't pray. Like we said earlier, Lo yipaleh b'makom parutz velo b'churba. Maran's language continues. Velo ahare bet knesset im eno mahzir panav the bet knesset. If you're not facing the synagogue, it's a problem. Ahare bet knesset hu hatzad she'apetach patuach bo, v'hu hefech hatzad sheponim elav hakahal shemipallim v'yesh mefarshim behefech. Maran brings some, like we said, some say on the east, some say on the west. And then he says, "Vera'ui lahosh the divrei shnehem." Therefore, you should be machmir like both of the opinions. And he adds, "The gam k'shemipalel l'sha'ar tzdadim hutz lebet knesset yesh lachmir shachzir panav lebet knesset." Always pray towards the Bet Knesset, even if you're on the north or the south. The Bet Yosef continues, and he brings an interesting clarification from the Hot Hayim in the name of Rav Hai Gaon. He says that the point in the Gemara is that if someone is outside the synagogue, he should pray towards the synagogue, like we mentioned, and also towards the land of Israel, towards Yerushalayim. However, if this is not possible, and he cannot choose one over the other, meaning if his back is either towards Eretz Israel or towards the synagogue, it's prohibited. And in such a situation, a person should pray to the north or to the south, so that his back is not towards Eretz Israel or the synagogue. He gives a practical example of this when the Azara, which is sort of a mezzanine or maybe a ladies section of the Bet Knesset, is on the eastern side of the Bet Knesset. In that situation, you can't pray towards the east because your back will be towards the Bet Knesset. And if you pray towards the Bet Knesset, your back will be towards Eretz Israel. And therefore he suggests to pray to the north or to the south in order to avoid the issue. We see from here that there's 2 points that a person must complete: praying towards Yerushalayim, towards Eretz Israel, and also not to have his back towards the Bet Knesset. Bet Yosef then brings that the Rambam himself was asked this question. The Rambam was asked whether a courtyard that is adjacent to the synagogue or a small room that is next to the synagogue that share a wall with the synagogue, does it have the problem that the people praying inside the small room would have their backs towards the Bet Knesset? The Rambam unequivocally explains, look at his language, how he says it. He says that there's no issue in praying in any of these rooms, since it is not noticeable, and therefore it is not disrespectful if it happens to be that people's backs are toward the synagogue. He brings proof from the Gemara, which discussed, like we mentioned, Eliyahu Navi, and says that only when a Bet Knesset has nothing around it, and a person is obviously on the road and he's praying opposite the Bet Knesset, that's the issue, because there's a tremendous disrespect, and it seems that he's praying towards a different power. However, inside the rooms, smaller rooms of the Bet Knesset, there's no problem as long as they face Yerushalayim. We look carefully at the Bet Yosef, even though he doesn't say clearly that there's a mahloket between Rav Hai Gaon and the Rambam. Seems to be that there is a mahloket. Mishnah Bra and the Eliyah Rabbah do seem to say so. Maran at the end of seif zayin does bring the lashon of the Rambam alone. He says, only when it's obvious, that's when we have an issue. Aval im hu mitpalel bebait hasamuch lebet knesset, in a room or a house next to the bet knesset, upanav keneged Eretz Yisrael karaui, v'horav lekotel beto, shu kotel bet knesset, mutar she'eno nikar shemachzir panav mibet knesset. We now continue to seif het. Seif het discusses passing by the synagogue when the congregants are praying inside the synagogue. The Gemara says that it seems that a person like this is a kofer. However, there are qualifications which make it much easier on a passerby. We'll read the lashon of the Tur. Tur says, "Va'afilu la'avor acharei bet knesset b'sha'ah she'tzibur mitpalelim asur shenir'a kikofer kevan she'eno nichnas." If you don't go into the synagogue when they're praying, it seems that a person is a kofer, a non-believer. However, this is only hani milei shu panui, when he's not doing anything. Aval shu noseh masoi nikar shemepnei masao nimna. If he seems that he's going on away, he's carrying packages, so he's not going to the synagogue because he has work to do. Afilu im panui mulavush tefillin nirah sheno kofer. He's wearing tefillin, so obviously he's not a kofer in Hashem. Afilu im panui below tefillin. He doesn't have tefillin and he doesn't have his briefcase or his package. Im yesh bet knesset acher ba'ir. There's another synagogue. O yesh le'oto bet knesset petach acher en lachush. If there's another entrance to the synagogue or another synagogue, it's not a problem. She'la hashtoki kofer d'shemei knesset petach acher or lebet knesset acher. If there's a reason to believe that he's not coming to shul because there's another bet knesset, or if there's another entrance to this bet knesset, we say it's fine and we're not hoshed. The Bet Yosef adds from Rabbeinu Yonah that if he's riding on an animal, it's not a problem. We assume that he needs to attend to his animal. Also, Rabbeinu Yonah adds that this issue is only a problem when he's walking on the side of the street where the entrance of the Bet Knesset is located. However, if he passes on another side of the Bet Knesset where there's no door, it's not considered like porek all tefillah me'alav. When we learned Hilchot Chanukah, we mentioned that the Bet Yosef asks a question comparing this halakha and the laws of Chanukah. The Bet Yosef asks that in this halakha, it seems that even though there's a big problem, we give the benefit of the doubt and we're very lenient if there's some sort of benefit of the doubt why a person is not coming to the Bet Knesset. However, by the laws of Chanukah, we require a home that has two entrances to light on both entrances. And seems to be a contradiction to this halakha. And he gives two different distinctions between the laws of Chanukah and the laws of Bet Knesset. Firstly, he says, Tefillah is a concept of Mikabel alav ol malchut shamayim. When we pray, we're accepting the yoke of Hashem, which is a basic and fundamental belief in Judaism. So we quickly don't assume that a person has any faith issues. And we assume that he can come from another door, he's going to another shul, he's busy going to work. But by Hanukkah, the mitzvah of lighting the Hanukkah candles don't have this element of Kabbalat ol malchut shamayim, and therefore Chachamim felt that we should be strict, because we might see that a person doesn't light on both entrances, people will come to be choshedim that he's not doing the mitzvah properly. Another distinction that Bet Yosef says is that the mitzvah to pray is free. There's no expenditure, there's no expense. And therefore, we assume that a person is going to pray, whether on this side, on that side, here or there, but he'll pray. However, Hanukkah candles require buying oil, buying wicks, and the Chachamim felt that we should be a little bit more strict because since this is an expense, a person might be lax in the mitzvah, and therefore we require him to light on both entrances to his home. Seif Het reads as follows: Asur la'avor hosa bet knesset batzad she'apetach patuach bo, like Rabbeinu Yonah, b'sha'ah she'tzibur mipalelim, mipnei shenir'a ki kofer, kevan she'eno nechnas להתפלל. ואם נושא מסוי, או שלבוש תפילין, או שיש בית כנסת אחר בעיר, או שיש לבית כנסת זה פתוח פתח אחר, או שרוכב על הבהמה, the Rama adds from the Bet Yosef mentioned, mutar. In all of these cases, when we can assume that he's doing something else and that he's going to pray either somewhere else or enter a different door or is on his way, it's okay. Thank you for joining us, and we'll continue with Seif Tet in our next session. Shavua Tov and Besurot Tovot for all Am Yisrael.